Hey everyone, welcome again to another episode of the Layoff Legends podcast. And as we jump in, remember this season is about career strategy and talent management and how do people navigate their careers either pre-layoff, during the layoff, or right after the layoff. Our next guest is an executive at Lumen Technologies. And before I continue, I just want to share as we bring these executives on, they're really sharing from their perspectives and not necessarily as spokeswomen or spokesmen for the company. So with that being said, please enjoy my interview with the VP of Organizational Development, Sarah Bernstein. Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Layoff Legends podcast, where we come together to listen to layoff stories and relevant expertise with a focus on finding inspiration, encouragement, and guidance for the layoff community and beyond. I am so delighted to host another episode today with another special guest, an executive in the HR space. We're really excited to bring this level of expertise to our community today. Sarah, welcome to the Layoff Legends podcast.
Thank you.
So good to have you. And so for those of you who don't know Sarah's work, I would love to read a quick bio. Sarah is an HR executive focused on taking a systemic approach to business partnerships and consulting. She partners with C-suite business leaders to increase strategic clarity, individual leadership, team effectiveness, and organizational process through strategic planning, leadership capability building, management development, succession planning, talent management, and individual coaching. She has an innate ability, and you'll see this during the call today, to quickly assess an organization, its leadership, and individual development needs and create operative solutions. Keyword operative. I think it's really powerful when we think about how to put things in process and not just talk about them. Her specialties include organizational development and change, leadership team effectiveness, talent management, high potential employee evaluation, succession planning, coaching, and recruiting. And I have known Sarah for many, many years. We met at Microsoft, and I have watched your career from the sidelines, watching her lead at some of the most admired companies today. So we're talking Airbnb, PayPal, Microsoft, and now currently at Lumen, where she is the VP of Organizational Transformation. And from what I know, Sarah, she really brings a people-centered human approach to leadership that is grounded on impact and results. Sarah, welcome again. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Let's jump in. Our audience is growing in terms of some of the folks that are outside tech, some of the government folks that are being laid off, and the impact that this is having across our entire industry. So why don't we just start from there? What is going on in the world of HR today? What are HR executives talking about right now with layoffs and changes that are happening in the industry?
Most HR executives are talking about the rate of change, and the rate of change is speeding up because of very connected communities across the globe. And also due to AI, there's quite a bit of evolution in the workplace because of AI. I would say for those of us in tech, change and speed are a constant, but AI is definitely increasing that. I would say HR execs are talking about the same thing that business execs are talking about if they're doing their job right.
One of the things that we're all seeing is that there's no playbook for this. There's so many things that are happening so quickly that the technologies are emerging quickly, businesses are being threatened, people's careers are changing very rapidly because of the layoff situation. So there's a lot of change afoot. There are ways we want to approach the conversation today. One is really about those that have been laid off and that are experiencing this. So really getting the HR perspective there. And then the other is this slice that we actually haven't taken before on this podcast, which is for those leading the layoffs themselves. We want you to take us into the room, into some of the conversations that are happening in those rooms and how the human element is approached. So why don't we start from for those being laid off at the moment? We have over 400,000 layoffs over the last year and a half, almost 2 years in tech. Some of the largest and well-known companies, well-funded companies are laying folks off. How is HR thinking about this when they look at somebody that's been laid off? Because folks do have to move to different parts of their careers. And a lot of our audiences have told us that, am I going to be looked at differently now that I've been laid off? Is this a career blemish? Could you walk us through how HR thinks about layoffs and how they look at talent that moves from other companies?
I'll address this just as a leader and not necessarily as an HR leader. I'm in the Bay Area at this time. So I was in Seattle for 18 years and I've been in the Bay for 10. Layoffs are pretty commonly. And I realize that as an individual, when you've left a company, whether it's a layoff, whether there was a change in leadership, or if there were other circumstances, that what happens for most people is they go into a threat state. And that threat state creates an environment in your body and in your mind. And what I encourage every individual to do is start before that day and think through, what are your strengths? What are the areas that you are finding most joy in your work? And how do you dig into those? And where do you see your path going forward? Your question is it a blemish? I would say absolutely not. Layoffs are pretty common. Businesses pivot. Businesses have to face different circumstances, but it's not a blemish within businesses, and it's not often a reflection on a person's performance.
So getting very tactical, how does someone tell their story around the fact that, hey, I've been laid off?
Think about when we had to make changes within our business at PayPal and when I had to make changes in my business at Airbnb. Two different circumstances. At PayPal, we were pivoting the business. My business leader and I had one principle: treat everyone with respect. So it does not matter if it's your first day, your last day. We wanted everyone to feel that they were treated with the same respect no matter what day it was for their job at PayPal. And so we entered into the work from that direction. At Airbnb, we had to make drastic changes in the face of COVID. As most people know now, the travel industry was quite hit during COVID, which makes quite a bit of sense. Things came to quite a screeching halt for us. And so we needed to make changes within our business. For candidates who have experienced layoff, the best thing to do is be very candid and say, unfortunately, I experienced a layoff. My team was impacted by changes within the business. And so now I'm searching for my next role.
That sounds very direct. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of gymnastics or turning around on that. It's, hey, this is what happened and I'm looking for my next opportunity.
That's right. And then what you do next is talk about your successes, where you made an impact. You should really be capturing what was your impact on the business, what are some examples of that impact, and what are your interests next? Why are you interested in that role? What kind of impact do you aspire to make? And why are you interested in that company?
Some of the things that our community is facing right now is the narrative around layoffs. And so what really started as business decisions and cutting costs and duplicate roles, some of the conversation and narrative now is around performance and how people are being let go. How do folks tell that story?
I think you tell it thoughtfully. So what I hear you asking is, what happens if you are a non-performer? And what do you do in that scenario when you're entering into interviews?
Let's talk about that first. We've seen a lot of very fascinating posts on LinkedIn
Yes.
around, hey, I got caught up in this in the performance related attrition, but my history
Mhm.
is of high performance. This is an interesting conversation that folks need to manage there. So yes, those two perspectives would be very helpful.
First of all, if you're a high performer, then you say, I've always been a high performer. I was impacting the business in A, B, or C way. Here's some of the things that I saw out of the impact and my metrics that speak to my accomplishments. And so you speak from that perspective. I don't believe that you need to dwell on not being a performer or being a performer. What you want to speak to most is how you're fit for that role, your accomplishments, the same things you would focus on in every interview. The challenge when you have been laid off is that you have an extra narrative in your head. You're feeling on your back foot often. Some people feel fine. I know other people who have been part of recent layoffs and they feel great. I just talked to a dear colleague also at Microsoft. Another relative of theirs was laid off. They're on a break. They're feeling great. So I think it's a matter of your perspective. Many people find that this time out sort of reframes things for themselves, their interests. So I would try to quiet the voices and speak from your successes and where you've made an impact. So that's category one. Now, if you weren't performing, it's first of all really good to understand and reflect what wasn't working for you in that role. Where do you want to harness? What are the capabilities that you possess most? You want to think about what is your next opportunity to develop and continue developing the skills you were working on and lean into those things. What I would suggest is in interviews, not spending an inordinate amount of energy there. I don't think you're going to find flow or find your highest energy by focusing on things that you were not performing well in the role you were in. Lots of things happen in a career. We have lots of opportunities where things go smashingly well, and other opportunities where it doesn't go quite as well as maybe your last position. I would say lean into those learning opportunities and don't focus tons of energy there during an interview. You want to be on your A game and feel good about the skills you're digging into that you're going to use next.
I love the perspective on not just focusing on what worked really well, but there is a longer term perspective. Your career is a sequence of all your accomplishments and all your learnings and all your roles. And so it's about extracting not just from that unique experience, but then overall.
Yeah.
So take us into the rooms for those leading layoffs. So you've been in these rooms many where these difficult decisions have to be made. And I love that you alluded to it earlier around whomever is being laid off, whatever's happening, this has to happen in a respectful way. What are some of the things that you wish more leaders understood about the human impact of these decisions?
As a people leader, when I've had to make these really difficult decisions, there's sort of three elements of it. Actually, maybe four. The first element for any people leader and business leader is the same sort of dread and sadness and disappointment that goes into impacting human lives every day in making these difficult decisions. That's the first thing that I've seen come up for almost every leader I've partnered with. The second thing is, frankly, assessing. And this is where I put my more kind of business minded and intellectual brain into place and thinking through what does the organization need to move through its future? What are we doing in the market? What does it mean from a strategy perspective? And therefore, what does it mean in terms of talent shift or movement? And so getting very clear on that and making thoughtful, wise, careful decisions about that. I wish both leaders and people leaders made sure they slow down, you assess carefully, you make sure you're making the right choices from a talent perspective of what you truly are going to need and call it the next 12 to 18 months. I've seen people cut roles where they weren't thoughtful, they didn't check across teams, and then organizations find that they need those roles and they need those individuals back in 6 months. When really thoughtful planning is done, it's done with the utmost care and respect for where the business is headed and what is required of the talent within the organization. And that leads me to the third point, which is as you prepare, making very thoughtful, unbiased, performance and criteria-based decisions is key. Helping leaders through that, making sure that you're partnering with all appropriate parties, whether that's your employee relations team, your legal team, and then thinking very carefully through the moment where you really have to have that conversation with an individual. And that takes me back to the principle that I discussed earlier. It's about respect every single day for the employees that are on our team and every moment through that communication. Before, after, being a partner to those individuals. The best job that I've seen done there is actually when we did have to impact people on Airbnb. We made our list of employees public. We showed their profiles. We helped them connect with recruiters. We highlighted them on LinkedIn, and many other companies took up that practice after we did it first.
I've looked at some of the practices that a lot of companies have done. Airbnb definitely stands out as one of the most human and intentional approaches that I've seen in a while. Even outside the severance, there is such an intentional approach towards taking care of the people that were affected based on the business decision and helping them the best the company could in placing them in the right place. It leads to the next conversation, which is around rebuilding trust, because brand many times seems external, but then there's an internal brand element to this, and that's actually what drew people to the company. So when you see these things happen, there's definitely an impact there. When it comes to the trust that has been impacted by the layoffs, how do leaders approach trust and help rebuild that with the employees that remain, and so that they can continue to invest in the right culture versus a culture where folks are looking over their shoulders and thinking they're next?
Let's use Airbnb as the example. I am a huge fan of Airbnb. They have an amazing culture, very thoughtful leaders. They are curating and creating experiences for individuals where they're connecting to community through staying at individuals' homes and staying in communities and creating experiences around community. And that is true inside of Airbnb and in the product that Airbnb is trying to create for human beings all around the world. I think that showed up in how we led through that impact to our Airbnb family and friends. And it meant really being intentional about the communication, posting lists on LinkedIn of who had been impacted, helping connect them through other people, giving them support, creating a very generous package. As you researched and mentioned, yes, the packages were definitely quite supportive. And the other half of that how do you continue trust, is how you communicate that to those that are staying. Because there is an impact to people who stay, right? It's, survival guilt, and it does happen. And I think encouraging being transparent with folks on your team, explaining the why, leading through it, checking in with your employees and being sure that they are okay. And then, continuing to communicate with them through the journey. Many organizations might just prepare for the day of impact, but the feelings that people experience, the fear or the sadness people experience linger. And so it's important to really partner with people on both sides of this conversation before and after.
I like what you're referring to around the intentionality of this, and it's not business as usual. There's a human component to it. As I talk to folks in the industry and folks in these companies, there's a lot of angst. It's like, great, this happens on a Thursday or on a Friday, and you have to show up on a Monday. But there were 5 of us in the room. There are now 3 of us left. And a lot of the teams experience the survivor guilt that you mentioned earlier. How do leaders support and re-engage their teams after the layoff? What are some of the tactical ways that leaders can approach this to not just like, okay, it's Monday, business as usual, but there's a nurturing to ensure that the culture they're trying to build remains consistent?
I believe that's about good partnership between a people team and the leaders. So there's 3 things that come to mind for me. And the first thing is focus. What are you focused on as a business? How do you connect people back to the focus of the team and the focus of where the business is going? Now, that's a very practical side because having a focus, having a bucket to place things in, it helps bring down anxiety, helps insert calmness. But I also would say that you want to check in with people. You want to check in with the team, and you want to be sure that you're spending extra time with the individuals. And that's both the HR team and the leadership team. In moments like this that I've seen done well, we usually have a pretty comprehensive communications and project plan that go into anything like this that is impacting human beings within our businesses. And they don't stop on that day. They really continue to connect with the team and care for the team. And in some cases where there's very broad impact, you really want to use all your resources. You use coaches, you use employee cares, and be sure that employees really feel well connected. I'm just coming off of having attended Uplift in New York. It's a phenomenal organization that has very deep and intense data on performance and employee sentiment. And we're living in a time where people are more anxious. And so it's important to recognize that this is a huge moment of anxiety within the United States culture. It's an opportunity to just get informed about what is your level of anxiety, what allows you to feel calm and connected and resilient. How are you focusing on your own wellness, and what brings you into that calm, connected space?
One of the things that I struggle with is the sole responsibility of leadership to solve a problem or to create a culture. And I found great cultures are not just the function of leadership, but also great teams and great individuals. Are there responsibilities that teams or individuals can do to help manage the post-layoff?
What comes up for me is teams at Palo Alto Networks. I've spent time there as well. Teams at Palo Alto Networks are caring and very connected. The first thing that came up is it's like basic human care and connection. Let's go back to the basics of what it means to care as a human. It means that I'm going to ask you, how are you doing? I'm going to ask you, what is it that I can do to support you at this time? How are you feeling about what happened to our team members? But also, how can I help you in your work every day? We all have different skills and capabilities that we're bringing to teams, and the best teams actually create the kind of trust and accountability and camaraderie against common goals that allow us to achieve together. And so going to back to the basics about what make great teams and what makes great connected humans is important in those moments. Just getting curious and asking people what they need. Some people don't want to talk about it. Some people do. Some people, want to be heard. Some people want to be hugged. And some people just want to be in the presence of others without having to be heard or hugged. So determining what that individual needs and providing it by asking and getting curious is the best thing that both team members and leaders can do. See a good human.
I like the intentionality of what you're saying, where it's like, hey, don't push this thing under a rug. Sometimes you actually do have to talk about it. I love that you began with focus and saying, hey, look, these are the reasons why, but in the midst of this, what can we do to support you? You can't just push it under the rug and believe it won't affect the culture of those that are left behind. How do some of the best companies do this? Are there leadership programs? What's happening to ensure that the culture is protected?
My hope is that the company is focusing on culture in the first place. And listen, you happen to pick a leader that is, comes from very high principles in terms of culture, in terms of, thinking through the requirements and connectiveness between strategy and organization and teams and performance. So you kind of picked your audience when you're asking that question. But I would say, how do you stay connected to your culture? Culture is behaviors. It's what I do when I'm, both seen and unseen, and being sure that if we have values and we have behaviors that are backing up the culture of the organization, that we're operating in that nature no matter what we're doing. And so as long as you stay truly connected to your culture when you're making these decisions, a lot of times you'll come out on the other side. And when you are connected to values of kindness, of teamwork, of creating value for our customers, those things are really important to keep paramount no matter what we're doing. But you also asked, is there a playbook when you're making these changes? Your playbook, in my mind, should be your strategy and what you need to do for your customers to achieve their needs. Your playbook should be very thoughtfully thinking through, is your organization really structured in a way? Does it have the right talent? Are you performing in a way that allows you to meet those needs of your customers, or are there changes that need to be made? And then lastly, yes, there are playbooks when we have to make changes to our teams and employees. And that's really about being very thoughtful about these moves and then really communicating our why with care.
Sarah, there's a question that I have prepared here, and it's kind of thinking based on your answers how to ask this. And so bear with me. The question was for people who remain post layoff and folks are in the workforce, how can they make themselves more resilient in this unpredictable job market? But as we're talking about this, should the goal be making yourself layoff proof? Or should the goal be like, hey, look, I'm loving what I'm doing. I'm growing in my experience and my impact. Should the layoff and what's happening right now be part of the considerations of things that I plan for? Or do I just, hey, continue to dive in, continue to grow, continue to strive? I'm curious of how people should think about these layoffs in the context of their own career resilience and career vision.
I think you're asking me about three things. First is about career growth and how should I think about my career path and growing and being sure that I am continually sort of employable, if you will. And then, hey, how can I recession proof or layoff proof myself? And that's another piece of it. And then resilience, right? So the first thing is everybody has different aspirations in their careers. Some people may desire to stay with companies because they love the brand, they love the organization, and so no harm, no foul if people want to stay at the organization and continue to evolve there, but careers are really different. And what I would encourage people to do, no matter whether they've been at a place for a long time and want to stay, or whether they want to continue to pivot, is just be really clear on what you're trying to grow. Are you trying to grow lateral experiences? Are you trying to grow in your leadership? Are you trying to actually pivot in your career and take on other skills and get into another function? So try to plan your career in about 1 to 3 year increments and know what you're gaining from your next experience that's going to get you to wherever your aspirations are. I remember coaching people in different roles that were executives and that said, I really just want to teach next. Okay, well then how do we use what you're doing now to actually pivot you into teaching next? Or I really want to have a restaurant next because what I like doing is cooking and that's what truly drives my passion. Okay, well then how do we use what you're doing now to actually accrue a certain amount of leadership experience that's transferable to restaurants and a certain amount of cushion in your wealth so you can take that risk and make that move? That's the piece about planning your career, is being really thoughtful in what is your path? What is motivating you? How will you get there? But the other thing is, how do you make yourself kind of recession proof? And this is a detriment of having been in many companies and also being more mature in my career and saying, you can't. It's like saying, can I protect myself from anything bad happening in my life? No. The best thing you can do is focus on gaining, different skills and different experiences, being in jobs that bring you joy and that you're successful in and that make you feel like you're growing and you're happy and you're digging into your motivation. So that's the, can I become recession proof or, continually protect myself from that? I don't think you can, because businesses change and teams change. And you could go through a whole career and never have this happen, and bless you if you do. I am not in that category. I have been riffed and I made it out the other side. And I've been impacted by changing teams and I've made it out the other side. So you will too, I promise you. What I would say about resilience is, again, let's go back to the fact that we're living in a time in the United States where anxiety is high. Resilience is important. That to me is about learning about yourself and figuring out what brings you back to center, what fuels you and makes you feel calm and connected and grounded within yourself. And how do you work on that every day? That's an everyday muscle that we all need to continue to learn to flex. I don't flex it well every day, and I'm sure many others have great days and I have bad days, but knowing what actually gets you back to center and gets you to resilience and rest and recuperation is key. No matter whether you're experiencing a layoff or you're just, floating on 5 nines in your career.
There's a strong theme around being very intentional. And sometimes we tend to lose that where you just coast and you're just doing the role and you're just doing the job. But we are hearing this more and more on the podcast, whether it's pre-layoff or post-layoff, the power of being very intentional, being very clear on what you want, and then moving towards that, taking daily and actions to actually get you there in your career and ultimately in life. Sarah, we're kind of wrapping here. As we think about career strategy and talent management, let's do a little bit of a lightning round.
Okay.
Best career advice you've received?
Jobs are like buses. Another one is always coming by. So just be very thoughtful about which bus you're taking. Abby Buck.
Worst career advice you've received?
Worst career advice I ever received told me I needed to make a choice between being an organizational development leader or growing up as like a seasoned HR leader. And I had to choose my path. And I frankly said, no, I don't. And I didn't. And I've never looked back. I've always used both.
Very powerful. Best leader you've worked for and why?
I have 2 best leaders I've worked for. I've been blessed to work for many leaders. You can look on my LinkedIn and you'll see a list of those leaders recently. I am so thankful for the amazing colleagues that I've been around. They've all helped me learn and grow. But hands down, the 2 CHROs that I bow down at and listen to every word from, and some that I have followed, Beth Axelrod and Anna White, the CHRO of Lumen.
And what is it about them that makes them unique?
They both have a very deep understanding of business and markets. So they're business-led people leaders. They are absolutely incredible human beings that always operate with integrity in their values first. And they know how to build amazing people teams and partner with their leaders to actually make a huge impact on the business.
One of the things, back to themes, the best leaders that are helping navigate, not just folks that are laid off, but even folks who are staying, the core is the human element, the person on the inside that deeply cares. The quote around people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Yeah.
And all of that is kind of wrapped up in good leadership in times like this. What's one piece of advice you would give folks right now that are seeing all these layoffs happen, that are either could have been affected or are considering maybe they're next? What would you say to them?
I guess 3 things. I mean, first of all, it's back to the resilience and the care for yourself. Stay focused on what keeps you centered. Stay focused on what gives you joy. So think through your last roles and your career and what has really brought you joy in your career and, follow that path. Follow the path of what inspires you and brings you joy in your career every day. Yes, we all often, unless you were blessed in a different way, have to make money and actually provide for those around us or yourselves, but try to do so in something that you really enjoy. The other thing I would say is listen, people want to help, people want to partner with you. So use your colleagues, use your friends, be sure in a time of a layoff that you dig into the care and partnership of others where you need it. And then lastly, just make a plan. Think through with care about how those things come together. Where are you finding your joy? What do your friends and colleagues reflect back to you? And what does it mean about the path forward for you?
Gems. Sarah, thank you. Incredibly simple, but incredibly powerful in terms of how we kind of apply these. So I really appreciate the time. Folks, this has been amazing. Again, this is what we're trying to do, really bring a sense of expertise here in some of these very challenging and unpredictable times we live in, whether that's pre-layoff, you're going through a layoff right now, or you're back on seeking your next thing or creating your next chapter. And so we hope this was really, really valuable. We will place all the information that Sarah shared and some of the other resources that I know she mentioned in the show notes. Everybody's journey is different, but what we're trying to do here is really bring people to a place of where this setback becomes really the setup for the next comeback. So we're really excited about it. Until next time, folks, thank you for spending time with us on the Laid Off Legends podcast, and we will see you next time.